All right, well, it's 4 minutes after the hour. Let's go ahead and get started. Does anybody have any questions? Or I can go to the one that Ann posted.
I have questions.
Right.
Sort of. I kind of got them answered. I guess with just the photo evaluations, for F11, oh sorry, F13. Actually, I think I'm okay. Hold on. So basically, with the F11 on the main light, and then 1.5 stops, that should equal F13, right? Really?
That isn't anything we really care about, be honest with you.
Okay.
You just want, in fact, I've got something I can show everybody. So I was prepared for these questions today. Accidents happen. Here we go. All right. Here's this guy here. This is kind of what you're looking for. I can't get this exact with this software because it doesn't go Sherman specs, but it gives a basic idea. You know, you can see the shadow on the ball over here. You see a little shadow going behind. And that's what they're looking. They're just looking for direction of light. They're not looking. Now, this is set at F. You can see up here, 85 millimeter lens, 1/125th of a second shutter speed, f11 aperture, ISO 100, 5500K. So we got that. We're going to say for this purposes of this is the right exposure. Now, how many pictures do you take at f11?
1. Well, really? 3.
Which picture do you take with your camera set to f11?
So wouldn't they all be f11s?
Nope.
No. Okay.
Your camera aperture.
Oh. None of them, because one is f13, one's 5.6, right, okay, and one's f16.
So let's see what happens when we change our aperture to f13. What happened to that picture? What happened to the exposure on it?
Got a little darker.
It got a little darker. So let's see if we change our shutter speed. I'm all the way down to 30-second shutter speed. That really didn't change it, did it? Because shutter speed has almost no effect on flash photography.
Right.
It affects ambient light. So let me go back up to where it was. So what else can I change to get my exposure back to where it was?
ISO.
ISO. Now, how many stops did I lose of light when I went from F13 or F11 to F13?
1.
1 stop. So my ISO is at 100.
120. Yeah, 200. Okay.
200. And now we're back pretty much where we were.
Okay.
Okay, now, here's where it gets difficult. When I go down to the one that they want to do at F6, F5.6, that's really bright.
Right.
That's how many stops down, or how many stops from F11?
A lot.
That was 11, 1 stop down from that. So that was 2 stops. We've already seen where I could, no matter what I do with my shutter speed, that's not going to affect it. So what else can I change?
The ISO, move it 2 stops.
2 stops on the ISO. I'm already at 100. 50 is 1 stop. ISO 25 is 2. Now I'm back to where I need to be.
Okay.
How many people have their camera that goes to ISO 25? I know mine
I
doesn't.
don't think I do.
Yeah, if your camera goes down that far, it'll work. A lot of people, their camera doesn't go, it might go down to ISO 50. I haven't seen a lot that go to ISO 25 because I'm cheap and I don't buy expensive cameras. So, what would you have to do?
Move the
Move the
light back.
lights.
Yeah, moving the lights. It's all part of your beginning setup.
The angle of the
I
light
have
Nope.
or the
I have an idea.
What's that?
I was like thinking about it, and basically, you have to set up the first one with numbers you can use for your F13. So if you're gonna, now I'm just speculating here because I'm not sure what happens after you go to 5.6. But if you go set your first light at F11, and then you use whatever your camera will work to set the light. So if your camera will work at say 200 ISO with 125 and F11, that's what you'd set your first light with. Is that correct?
Right. That's what I recommend. That's actually what I did. I started off with a higher ISO on my F11 setting so that I had room to go down or up in either direction without losing anything. See,
so I understand that you go, you set that there like that, but then when you go to 5.6, you don't reset your lights, do you?
No.
Yeah.
Once you set your lights,
what you got, so
initially,
you make adjustments there. Yeah. Okay.
right now,
I think I might be able to do it now.
if I bring these way down here, get it closer to what I want. Okay, now here, I've got it set at F11, ISO 400. So when I go down to F5.6 down here, yeah, it's still bright, but I can easily go down 2 stops on pretty much any camera on my ISO. And see that, trust me, I did the same thing when I initially set mine up because, I set it up ISO 100, got everything perfect at F11. No problem with shooting at F13, turn my ISO up a little bit, get a little more sensitivity. F16, not a problem. F5.6, I was screwed because the camera I was using didn't go lower than ISO 100, which is where I started. And so that's all it is. You have to think ahead when you're doing it. And Richard, that's exactly what I did. Is I started
I was ready.
higher
I was ready to
ISO.
quit the other day.
Yeah, and that's I started at higher ISO, so I had room to move it up and down because as we saw here, since we're using flash, shutter speed doesn't do nothing. I just changed the shutter speed to 30 seconds on this simulation, but it didn't change anything because I'm using flash. Remember, your shutter speed is going to affect your ambient light, not the flash. I mean, yes, it will have an effect on your flash, but it's virtually imperceptible. Normal people, even abnormal people like me, are never going to notice it. So Lisa, did I answer your question or did I just add more confusion into it?
No, I think you confirmed something.
Okay. That's why I really like this software I got.
No, I was so amazed. I'm like, I'm pretty, what software is it?
It's called Satellite 3D.
Okay. It's
Now-
pretty cool.
It comes with a 14-day free trial. And I don't remember what I paid for it after the free trial,
Mhm.
but I play around with it to give myself ideas of how I'm going to do different lighting scenarios before I actually, have the client in front of me.
Mhm.
That way I don't look like I'm a total idiot. A little bit, but not too much. All right. Oh, let me stop sharing here. Okay. Anything else? Anybody else have any other questions? Or like I said, we can go on to the question that Ann posted. Have we got you headed in the right direction, Richard?
I think I'm in the right direction at this point.
Okay,
I'm
good.
not sure, but I think I'm gonna figure it out.
Yeah, I saw your question and everything, and I was trying to figure out, okay, how can I answer it without demonstrating or out giving away?
Yeah.
I think this demonstration kind of showed you exactly what to do, hopefully.
Yes.
Yeah, I was thinking, well, if that's the case, then I just had to go back and study the book somewhere or something, and I didn't think that's going to give me the answer.
Yeah,
Then I decided, well, I have to attack it as I would a portrait.
Yeah.
And then the other portrait. And if
And-
you start thinking about that, well, how do you set your camera when you go to set your main light? You set that exactly like you're going to set for whatever you're going to set up your first reading.
Yeah.
It's going to be set at those settings on your camera. Now they throw you a loop and say you got to go to F13. Well, so I thought, well, what I need to do is go to F13 first. And by doing that, then it started the light to come on. Said, yeah, I could set my stuff where I could work at F13 and get my F11 on my light, and I'm good to go.
because what they're doing in there is it throws in a practical exercise of exposure equivalent,
Right.
and
But
that's what they were
that
trying to
wasn't
get
so
at.
difficult. You can figure out the difference in 1.5 stops, but when you when you go to set that first light up, if you're not thinking about that, it'll throw you for a loop.
Yeah, and with the 1.5 stop difference, yeah, I googled it.
Yeah.
I googled it, and I even asked, okay, how do you know if I have my fill light 1.5 stops less than my main light? Anybody want to guess what the answer is? Actually, the answer is on the checklist you use.
Well, isn't it the apertures? Shouldn't
No.
it like equal?
I mean, we're just talking about your lights.
Okay.
You have a main light and your fill light's 1.5 stops below your main light. How do they know if you have that fill light at 1.5 stops less than your main?
Shadows?
Probably on your metadata, isn't it? No, probably just by looking at shadows with your.
That's really all they're looking for. If you look at the checklist, that technical image checklist, it has 10 blocks. The only block on lighting is checking for direction of light. And they look, okay, you have a shadow off to the right, camera right. If you do, then your main light had to be at camera left. You have a slight shadow, doesn't matter how slight shadow behind Sherman or behind the ball a little bit. The answer is yes. Well, then your main light, your fill light must have been in the right place and not as strong as your main light. They really don't know if you have a 1.5 stop difference, but they're just looking.
I was thinking that, well, if I didn't have my light exactly like I wanted, I'd throw a black piece of cardboard behind it. Maybe I can, dim that light on that one side. But they're not going to see the metalight data on what your light is. They're going to see what your camera is.
Right. And also, and this I got directly from Julia Boyd. That setup they give you, that is the basics you must do. The checklist is what determines whether you pass. That, you need to do, knowing what you know as a photographer, to check off all 10 blocks on that checklist. I'm not, excuse me, I'm not saying stick a reflector in there to show a little light, extra light where you want it. But if that gets you to check off the checklist, because I flat out in a Zoom conference that we had, I flat out asked Julia that. I said, if they can check off all 10 blocks, that's all that matters, right? How they did it using their knowledge and experience is as long as they can get it. And she said,
That's the thing I was going to do next. I was going to go and go through that checklist and see what I had to have, make sure everything I was shooting for was on the checklist. If it wasn't on the checklist, I didn't have to worry about it.
right. And that checklist, it's pretty, like I said, when we do one of the image previews, that's exactly what we use. We go through that same checklist that the evaluators are using, except we don't tell you if it passed. You tell us, can you check off that block? And if you look at it, go, no, not on this go round, then we'll talk about, okay, what do you need to do to get it to that point?
And my understanding is this one-on-one goes through the closing date, doesn't it? You can get an appointment.
Right. You can get an appointment all the way at, well, you don't want to wait until noon on that day because that's when.
Yeah, I know, but I mean, 2 days ahead of time, I still got a chance to get
Well,
it.
I don't think they have anything on Friday.
No, we
I
don't
think-
have anything on Friday because if somebody was to, at least I don't have anything on Friday. The only days I have on that calendar are Monday afternoons, Wednesday morning. That's what I have. Other people have Tuesdays. Somebody else has Wednesday afternoon. Somebody has Thursdays and Fridays, and I don't believe anybody has anything on the final Friday. I don't know.
But I'm gonna try to get mine done tomorrow. I got a doctor's appointment this afternoon, and I might even start it this afternoon. But I've got some other irons and fire too. So,
But yeah,
but I'm gonna try to get mine done tomorrow.
I know a lot of the liaisons that go through it with you. If you have one that won't pass, at least I do. I can't speak for all the liaisons, but if you have one that won't pass, I'll tell you, go ahead and reshoot that one. Shoot me an email and we'll recheck that third one if you want. Or fourth one, whatever it is. I'm just, if you got to reshoot it, you got to do it on your own time. We're not going to do it in the middle of the evaluation.
Yeah.
I actually had somebody like, no, I don't have all day to do this. I've got other people scheduled. I think when I first did this, I scheduled 8 evaluations in one day. Yeah. By the time I was done, I had to kick back in my recliner and take a nap. So I would be
Along with a couple
rested
beers.
so I would be rested enough to go to bed. I was completely burned out. So now I'll do some in the morning or I'll do some in the afternoon, but I can't do all day long.
But how's it working out? Are you finding a lot of people don't pass with your evaluation at first?
Yeah, it's about maybe a 75-25. Most people, they check off all 10 blocks. There's probably, 25%, maybe less that don't, but then they redo it.
Yeah.
And once they've gone through our preview, our success rate on people getting their CPP, passing the official evaluation, is very high. I mean, I think the first time myself and Sally Kohler did like 14 people. And 13 of them passed the image evaluation. And the one who didn't, that person knew they weren't going to pass. They were late getting it evaluated, didn't have time to reshoot them, but they knew that what they had didn't check off all the blocks, and they knew what they had to do. The next time around, there was no problem with them. They got it.
Yeah.
All right. So we have any other questions? Nope. All right. Let me, if I can find it here. Pull up. Move this out of the way. The question that Ann posted for the written test: which of the following series would best represent the aperture settings in 1/2 stop increments? They asked that question, even though most of the questions, this is one of the few questions that doesn't deal just in full stops.
I think I posted that.
But with any
Depends on
question,
mine.
any of these questions, first thing you do is you figure out which two you can toss out right away. So let's go through them. 8, 2211, 5.5, 2.7, 1.3. Anybody think that's got half stops?
Nope.
Yeah, because I don't know about you, but my camera don't have a 5.5, 2.7, or 1.3 on it. That's just that's an easy, throw that one away. What about 22, 16, 11, 8, and 5.6?
Those are full stops.
Those are all very good. Those are all full stops. So we can throw that one away. Now we got 2 left. And answer B gave us a hint. So now we know what the full stops are. So we look at C. We know 22, 16, and 11 are full stops. And we've got a stop in between each of those.
Yes, C.
Yep. And then if we look at D, we got 22 and 16 are full stops, but then we got 2 stops in between. So obviously that can't be a half stop, but there's 2 of them in there. So yes, the answer is
C.
it is. Oh, come on.
C.
It is C. That is the correct answer. And here's something they got wrong. The reference, London and Upton, photography, 12th edition, page 25. There is page 25 right there. Can everybody see that one? No, I'm going to have to stop share and reshare.
Oh, I can't see. I see. Yeah, I can't see your book. No.
Okay. Here is page 25. Yep, it says so right down there, 25. It shows you all the full stops
But not the half stop.
from f2.8 all the way to f22. However, if we scroll up one page to page 24, got all the half stops and third stops. And we can look F19, F13, they're both half stops.
Is there a half stops for ISO kind of thing like this? Or
Yeah, I've never really, I guess it
Okay.
depends on your camera.
well, because when you're doing a 1.5 stop for your shutter, I'm sorry, your aperture, don't you also need to do 1.5 stop for your ISO?
No,
No.
you're that 1.5 stop is only for your initial setting of your lights.
Mhm.
What you do is you get your oh well, I got one somewhere. Don't know where I put it. It's in another bag. You get your light meter. Yeah, that's it. Put it by Sherman's head, point it towards your main light. and you set it whatever you want,
Mhm.
you know, make sure you don't have your ISO set too low on it. But your shutter speed, your ISO, and then you trigger your light. Make sure that you don't get any of the fill light in there. Me, I shut the trigger to my fill light off.
Mhm.
Jamie Hayes stood in front of his fill light. I don't know how big Jamie is, but there was no way I was blocking all that fill light. And so I triggered it, looked at my light meter, said like, F22, like, okay, my light is way too powerful. And so I started turning my light down and triggering it until it said F11. Then I shut the trigger for the main off, turned the trigger for the thing. And then I did the same thing, except kept adjusting my fill light until when I was 1.5 stops below.
Gotcha.
Jamie shows doing that in his videos.
Mhm.
I think where he confuses people, because it confused me, is he did that, took the initial F13 shot.
Right.
Then he went back with his light meter and rechecked the lights.
Mhm.
All he was doing is checking them, making sure he still had the F11 and the 1.5 stops less. He wasn't adjusting the lights at that point.
Okay.
All he was doing, but a lot of people like me, when I first saw it, I thought he was readjusting the lights in between each shot.
Mhm.
But he wasn't. He was just rechecking them.
Okay.
So once you get your lights set for the F11 on the main and 1.5 stops less on the fill, you don't have to mess with them anymore.
Okay.
Every adjustment after that is something in your camera.
Okay.
ISO or aperture.
To answer her question though, I've got my camera here, and if I put an ISO 100 and then I go up, it goes to 140.
Okay.
Then it goes to 200. So that's not half a stop. So each time you change, it changes different than a half stop, because then I go to 280, 400, 560. So it's not an even half.
Yeah, mine has got like, it's weird. It's not half. I'm not sure if they're third. It's just something in between.
Yeah.
And that's one of those, like, yeah, change it till it looks right.
Right. Okay. So I'm looking at my full stops, right? It's 5, 6, 8, 11, and 16. But then so 13, I think it's a half a stop or a third of a stop. But because it's a third of a stop, don't you also need a third of the ISO?
Yeah,
You can
that's
go
where
back to that question on your question you had where it showed which were half stops and which was.
yeah,
The
that is
question was asked a while ago.
yeah, F13 is a half stop.
Right.
And so you can't go full stops on your ISO. You got to go in between.
Okay. Okay.
And that's why, like, yeah, my camera, it has others in between the full stops.
Gotcha.
And, that's,
Most cameras you can set a half stop or a third stop.
yeah.
And I set mine at half stop.
And that also goes with the ISO.
Yeah, I don't know. I can't look at mine because I'm actually using my camera as a webcam right now.
Lisa, you want to be able to go into your camera settings and you can select your ISO and your shutter speed and all that and set it up to be either a full stop, half stop, or a third of a stop. On more advanced cameras, you can do that. On basic cameras, you're probably limited to full stops. But each one of those is you can select independently. So you might have your f-stop, so it goes every half a stop, but your shutters or your ISO may do a different stepping depending upon what you selected in your setup menu to make that work.
Thank you.
And that is something where your experience, if you can't change your camera, half stop on the ISO. It'll only go full stops. You're going to have to figure out a way to get that same exposure.
Right.
Yeah, Lisa, I would recommend if you do set it up, set all your settings up so they're all the same stepping.
Mhm.
Because when I'm out in the field, if I click my ISO 3 clicks, I know I need to click my shutter speed or f-stop 3 clicks to compensate the same amount. If you have it set up to do half a step in one and a third a step in the other, then it's going to hard to keep those in sync. So I just count clicks when I'm in the field.
Okay.
So
Yeah,
you're
he's-
saying the ISO is adjustable also as half stops or third stops. I didn't know that.
Well, it is in my camera, so but check your settings.
Yeah,
And
I got a D50, but I expect it does.
yeah, the you know more I don't want to call them remedial, but the more limited cameras will only give you full f-stops, but the professional ones should give you the entire range.
And like I said, it's just one of those things that, you know, you have to use your knowledge and experience.
Mhm.
Yeah, sometimes that specific setup may not work perfectly for what you have. And so you have to use your knowledge and experience to make it work. I said, I've known people, they put a little bitty white card to get a little more light in the shadows because their shadows were too dark for some reason. I've known people put a black card there because their shadows were too high. You do what you need to do, as long as your white card or black card doesn't show in the picture. You don't want to do that. That's a definite. Like I said, we'll notice stuff like that when we go through an image preview, because you know we get just as picky as the evaluators do. I
Yeah.
hope, maybe even more so.
Definitely, because when I was looking at my blacks, it was white, or it wasn't in with the range. It was too bright, so I might have to flag it.
Yeah, and let me see what I can find here.
Oh.
Here.
Let me-
Here it is. This is what I keep talking about, your certification technical image evaluation checklist. You got these 10 blocks here. And the way we do the previews is you bring your 3 images up in Adobe Camera Raw on your computer. Then you share your screen with us. And so you're showing us from your computer. And we walk you through this checklist. And you tell us, all right, block A, all approved kit items. You have all those. Yes or no? Boom, knock it off. And then when you get to, you know, images fill the frame. Yes or no? If you say yes, and click that, and we go through each one of these. And we even tell you about the hints that they've got thrown in there. Because, you know, they tell you, you know, I can tell you here, your highlight range, 220 to 250, midtone range, 195 to 230, which, yes, I know is not a true midtone. And shadow range, 5 to 35. They don't tell you exactly where to look, but they give you a little bit of information. And again, I got this directly from Julia Boyd. Highlight range, they look at certain aspects of the styrofoam ball. The midtone range, they look at certain aspects of the crayons. The shadow range, they look at certain aspects of the Sharpie. That's the only information. But if you read through carefully the layout composition, item 1, there's a couple of hints in there. And now one thing, because, you know, there's a place where it says, oh, where is it? Okay, where it says this must match the example images. And this is where I've tried to get them to change this, but they haven't yet. When they say it's not an exact duplicate. It's pretty close. Because there are things that Blick may send you that are different from what's in the example images. There are authorized alternate items they can send you if they're out of something. Like the example, you know, they have the 4-inch styrofoam ball. Well, if when you order Blick is out of the 4-inch ones, they'll send you a bunch of 3-inch ones. That's okay. That is an authorized replacement. If they don't have the oval Sharpie, they're allowed to send you a round one. The oval is preferred, but if they don't have any in stock when you order, they can send you the round one. There are 3 different shades of gray paper they can send you. And the crayons, if they don't have to have the 8-pack of Crayola crayons, they'll send you a 12-pack. One thing about the crayons, if they send you a 12-pack, pick out 8 of them. Do not put all 12 in the picture. There have been people in the past who have done that. Didn't go through one of our previews. But as soon as the evaluator saw 12 crayons, evaluation stopped. But, you know, the image, you know, a lot of people, when they switch from the portfolio to the 3 Sherman images, thought it was way too easy. All you got to do, buy a kit, buy a camera, poof, you're magically a CPP. Yeah, those people never tried to shoot these Sherman images. I guarantee they did. Because while it's not super difficult, it's not the easiest thing in the world. Mainly because you can't do any tweaking. Once you take the picture, that's it. That's what you submit, straight out of camera, raw image. Where in the old portfolio, you know, if I took a high key image, oh, well, I could pull it into Photoshop, you know, and I could adjust my exposure a little bit. I could adjust the highlights and the shadows, crop it and get it so it was straight, make it a perfect high key image. But I didn't shoot a perfect high key image. I made it look like a perfect high key image. Where with the Sherman method, it's either right in camera or it's not. And and one thing I've seen a lot of people, and it's heartbreaking. To make sure that you get it, especially if you have a zoom lens or if you're just adjusting your tripod, you look through that eyepiece and you get it until that floor just disappears. Guess what's going to show up on your image? Floor. Because the viewfinder shows you 97 to 98% of what the sensor sees. And so if you do it, because I did it, I caught it before I submitted it, fortunately, but I zoomed in until that floor just disappeared. And then I took the image, and when I pulled it up on my computer, I could see floor, even though I didn't see any floor through the viewfinder. So you gotta look, and like I said, fortunately, I caught it before I submitted. Of course, my first three images had other issues, so none of them passed anyway. I think a lot of the liaisons that we have participating in this did not get it the first go round. And it's not a super easy thing to do, but it's doable. I mean, I did it. Ron did it. Can't be too difficult that way. Gotta
People
wake up.
pass.
I might mention a couple things on that. Got to have a black crayon, one of the things. And then there was one more thing that you mentioned that I thought, what was it though? Okay, well, I can't remember, but you need one black crayon in that 8 crayons.
Right. You must have a black. What hint does you think that gives you? Since where are they looking for the midtones?
On the crayon, the black crayon in the wrapper.
Yep, it's the only thing that's going to be in everybody's photo that has the exact same shade of gray in the same place.
Oh, I know what it was. You have to have the Adobe, the color, what was it? Adobe,
Oh, the profile has to be set for Adobe Standard.
right, yeah.
It just
And then
falls. Go ahead, Lisa.
I was gonna say, and then the pen or the marker has to be uncapped to the back. Right?
True.
It
Has
has
to
to
be
be
put on the back.
uncapped and put on the opposite end. And where are they going to check for shadows?
On the cap.
On the Sharpie. So
Sharpie cap, right?
Yes, the
Doesn't say.
Sharpie cap.
they just say in the area of the Sharpies, of the Sharpie.
Oh,
But they tell you, make sure you take the cap off and put it on the opposite end. I take that as a hint.
But couldn't it also be the tip?
It
No.
could be.
is it in the shadow? Is it tip in the shadow? I don't think so.
The tip of mine wasn't in the shadow area.
Oh, okay, I see.
But so they don't tell you for sure, but they have some little hints in there.
Mhm.
And a lot of people, as far as the profile in Adobe Camera Raw being set from Adobe Color, which is what it defaults to Adobe Standard, that's because of the gamut of colors. Adobe Color has a large gamut of different colors. You can get all sorts of colors. Standard has fewer. Matter of fact, if you pull up a raw image in Adobe Camera Raw and you switch between Adobe Color and Adobe Standard and watch your histogram while you do it, you'll see that histogram shrink slightly between Adobe Color and Adobe Standard. And that's just something, they're making sure they're checking everything on the same level. And, that's what we do. We've gone through all the information that's on here, everything that's on the PPA website to see how they are checking these, how they're evaluating them. And like I said, we can't say 100% that yours will pass. But if you can check off all these boxes, there's no reason it should fail. But you have to be honest when you check off the box. If you're a little bit iffy, you might want to redo it. Sometimes it's better to redo it than wait for the next submission period. Anybody have anything else?
So just to be clear, which one was it? I can't remember now. I got confused. Adobe Standard or?
Oh,
Adobe
Adobe
Color.
Standard.
Okay.
It's Adobe Standard, and let me see if I can find where they actually tell you that. Okay.
It's on the tips technical image evaluation tips.
Right, you got CPP, the process, and the exam. And when you get down here, how are the 3 images evaluated? Trained evaluators, according to that technical image submission checklist, each image reviewed on the same objective scale, most recent version of Adobe Bridge Camera Raw, Adobe Camera Raw, profile, Adobe standard. And that's where it tells you that. And then there was one other thing. Okay, what should the 3 images look like? Images and placement of items should closely resemble the sample images that have been provided to you. Where in the checklist, it says they have to match it. Here, they're telling you they have to closely resemble it. And that is also something, you know, we've discussed with, you know, Julia and Odessa. And I think once they update the checklist again, they'll change that part of it, because that gets confusing to people, because people they'll take their image and they'll overlay it with the sample, and if it doesn't match perfectly, they'll throw their image away and redo it. And yeah, trying to get it to match perfectly, especially if you got one of the flat Sharpies and the sample has a round Sharpie in it, yeah, you're going to have trouble making it match exactly. So it just has to closely resemble the sample image. One thing I know they do look at is, if you notice when in the videos where Jamie is doing the setup, when he lays down the 3 pieces of gray paper, he brings the one behind over the one in front, and not the one in front over the one behind. There's a reason for that. When you have it, the one behind over the one in front, you can better see the seam between the papers. And they want to see those seams, because that tells them that you're using the 3 pieces of paper and not a gigantic roll of neutral gray. Which, you know, if they don't see those seams, you could be doing it on a 12-foot roll of neutral gray. You're never going to see any floor.
And that actually looks better, because when I try to do it the other way, I'm always like, am I overlapping? Did it fall off? Like, do I have a gap in it? So I think if you do it the other way, it's a lot better seeing it visually.
Yeah, because you want to be able to see those seams so that they can tell that you're actually using the paper. But, you know, they don't specifically tell you that. But in the sample pictures, you can see the seams quite well. And the final picture, which is
I would be a little ticked off if they cut me out because of that, though, because they don't say that in the checklist.
right, they don't
Yes.
say that, but they have to be able, you know, they don't say it, but the sample images, you can see the seam, and they want to be able, you know, you have to use the 3 pieces of gray paper. And if they can't see the seam, how do they know if you're using it? Because remember, these aren't photographers who are evaluating these. They are PPA staff who are not necessarily photographers, but they've been trained in going through this process. And so by not using photographers, you eliminate most of the opinion. Where, you know, well, yeah, that looks kind of close, but, you know, I really don't like the way the grain is on Sherman in this picture. It bothers me. Like, I know there was one evaluator, hated plaid. You're doing a family, you wanted to play lumberjack in the woods. They're going to be wearing plaid shirts. But this one evaluator, if you submitted a client image that they were wearing plaid, boom, failed. It's a hated plaid.
But that's when you had images, but not Sherman.
Right. That was when they had images. That's one of the reasons. Well, one of the reasons, from what I understand, is they went and looked at certifications on the national level. And when they had the image portfolio, it was not objective. Because you can't evaluate a portrait the same way as you evaluate a landscape or evaluate a building. You know, they're all a little bit different. And in order to hit the national standard for certification, it has to be objective. And with this, no matter what type of photographer you are, whether you could be a wedding photographer, you could be a portrait photographer, landscape photographer, architectural photographer, it doesn't matter. Everybody has to submit the same 3 images. So it doesn't matter what your photography background is. You all have to submit the same thing. And so it makes it more objective. Where the old way was it was completely subjective. It was opinions of whoever was evaluating it. And, you know, that doesn't meet the criteria for certification on the committees who have set up certification for all sorts of different things.
Yeah, it's actually a federal requirement that any certification program has an objective pass-fail measuring system. And because this got called into question the way it had been practiced, they backed up and said, we need to make this objective. So that was their way of doing it. And some of the people who saw this come in didn't like it. They thought it was too easy. But I'll tell you what, you try it out and it really does test your knowledge of the equipment, how to use it. And it took me 5 tries to get the pictures. And I passed on my first submission, but it took me 5 times to get my pictures the way I wanted them before I turned them in. So it is not easy.
And if your photography background happens to be one of taking pictures of little 12-inch wooden dolls, and hey, piece of cake. Very few people I know in photography actually do that. I don't know why. But as I've told everybody, the main thing I got out of the whole CPP, the whole process, is finding out how little I actually knew about photography. I thought I knew, fairly good amount before I started preparing for the exam. And I realized, I'm not that bright when it comes to photography, or I wasn't. But now I've learned a lot more. I have a lot more confidence in my ability. Tell people, I used to work with Sally Kohler all the time. I'd help her set up lights, change background, help pose people and everything for her. But if she said, all right, I need you to get behind the camera, I'm like, yeah, nope, that's your job. Where now, if I'm working with her, she doesn't even tell me to get behind the camera. She'll tell me, go ahead, let me get behind the camera for a minute. Because I just naturally, I'm going to get behind the camera and I'm going to set it up, take pictures. Because this whole process boosted my confidence so much. All right. We are coming in on the 1 hour limit for this. Does anybody have anything else? Because I know I can't stick around for a long time because I have a doctor's appointment a little bit later this afternoon.
So do I.
They got to check, count my eyes, make sure all 2 of them are working. Or is it 3? I lose track.
I think they just need some money.
Well, yeah, they always want that too.
All right, we'll see you guys.
All right. See everybody
you,
next
Chuck.
week. Bye-bye.